On today's show, Laura Heywood Interviews
one of the greatest voices of our time, celebrating his new album, Slow Dancing with a Boy, Broadway's Marty Thomas. Welcome to Laura Heywood Interviews. I'm Laura Heywood. Today's guest has basically been a star his whole life. His first Broadway credit was when he was only 11 years old in The Secret Garden. Since then, he's appeared in Xanadu and Wicked and has created and performed hundreds, if not thousands, of shows on the New York stages as a stalwart of the NYC nightlife scene. Marty Thomas knows everyone, and everyone knows him. I don't think I've ever met a performer who's both so prolific and so universally loved. His new album, Slow Dancing with a Boy, is out as of December 6th. So for those of you listening live on DNR Studios, you've got to wait a couple of days. You can pre-order the album now at martythomas.com. If you're listening a week later on the free podcast version of Laura Heywood Interviews, you can find Slow Dancing with a Boy everywhere. I love this album. I can't stop listening to it. In fact, when Marty walked in the door today, I put my headphones on his head and he heard his own voice coming out of them. The album features soaring vocals in genres that range from pop to gospel to country, with some show tunes too, but everything's been reimagined, rearranged, and reorchestrated, so everything has a different feel than you've ever heard it before. It makes me want to slow dance with someone I love. Maybe that's just myself right now, but in any case, Slow Dancing with a Boy belongs in everybody's permanent collection. Marty Thomas, welcome to Laura Heywood Interviews.
Thank you for having me, and that was the sweetest intro anyone has ever given me in this life of mine.
Well, it's just facts. So I'm so glad you're here. I adore you.
I adore you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
We've known each other for more than a decade, and I feel like I see you maybe once a year, but we always kind of jump into each other's arms, like, you know.
Well, you've got that sweet, open energy, and I'm a hugger, and I feel like it's so New York and LA to see someone that you really like and share that great energy with, and jump right back into, hey, girl, catch me up.
Yeah. You also have what I have, which is this sort of contagious joy. You really just... while I do not doubt that you have a full range of emotions in you, and I can actually hear it in your music, when I seem to run into you, you just exude positivity and you make me feel better about living in the world. Like, I just wish there were more people who had that kind of energy to share
really
with
sweet.
each other.
Thank you. I feel the same about you.
Yay. All right, interview over. Everybody go get dancing, slow dancing
Cuddle
with
puddle.
a boy. Okay, tell me about this album. It's so good. I want to hear about, like, how the concept came to you, how you picked the songs. You've got some incredible collaborators on the album. Give me, not the elevator pitch because we do have an hour to fill.
Sure.
But talk to me about Slow Dancing with a Boy.
It's honestly, it's a very layered project because it was... From inception, I worked on the album for about 3 years, but the concept of the album was like a gentle 30 years in the making.
Wow.
Because it was just, it was a deep wound that I didn't even know was there, which I think is common. I happened upon this HuffPost style. There's a pigeon in the window.
Yeah, there is a stuffed pigeon in the window, but that stuffed pigeon, this is going deep into DNR Studios behind the curtain stuff. There's a stuffed pigeon in the window because real pigeons sit on the outside of that window ledge all the time. And we were like, they need a friend. So I think one of DNR's, Derek and Romaine's listeners sent that. And now it's just one of our mascots around here.
That's hilarious. I love it. It's a giant pigeon, monster pigeon.
Yeah, but so are the New York City pigeons because tourists feed them.
What a good point. Okay, anyway, I digress. My ADD kicked in. So I happened upon this HuffPost article, like style clickbaity article that was about a boy going to prom. And there was a picture that very clearly let me know that boy was going to prom with another boy. Mm-hmm. And somewhere in my head, without really thinking about it, I clicked over to my growing up in the Midwest in the 90s roots and thought, I really hope they didn't hurt him too bad. I feel so bad for that kid. And I opened the article really expecting to see some sort of tragedy. And I was confused. I kept reading and scrolling because at the top it was just a picture of him standing at the top of the stairs like an 80s makeover montage movie. And his mom was taking a picture. There was like a picture. His dad was taking a picture of his mom, taking a picture of him with his date. And it was like the whole family was involved in celebrating this coming of age experience. I'm already confused. I keep scrolling and
Where's the hate crime?
Right. He's at the dance.
Wow.
Everybody's dancing. And it shocked me that they were dancing with him. Like, not paying attention to him, just dancing next to him. It didn't matter. Not dancing 10 feet away, wondering if they were going to get in trouble if they were seen next to him, or if they needed a minute to figure out if it was okay what they were doing, if it was okay to be woke at the moment. And he won, his date won prom king. They just had this beautiful day. But the wildest part of it was the article truly wasn't patting itself on the back for being awesome. It wasn't like the writer was saying, I went looking for a gay couple to show you how hip I am. It could have been a boy and a girl. It could have been a girl and a girl. It just didn't matter.
So what was the article about?
Just a boy going to the prom.
It was just a
Absolute-
character study in what the prom is. And
I don't even think it was that deep. It was literally a slice of life. This kid went to the prom. Look what prom looks like this year. That's it. But my head invented all of these strategies about what this article was meant to be because of my deep wounds that until that article started marinating, I didn't even know existed. So I closed it out mad at the article, just angry, and didn't really know why. Like, really ticked off. And I let it marinate for a lot longer than I really ever thought it would. And every time some memory from high school would come up, which is usually attached to music, because I was so deep in my head when I was in high school that I just was always so scared of letting people really find out who I was.
Because you were gay, or just in general?
And, in
I
fairness.
just outed you. I hope that's okay.
I think at this point, aliens know that Marty Thomas is gay. I grew up in a very small town. Very, very, very small town. Did you happen to watch The Act, the series with about the mother with Munchausen by proxy?
No.
And the young girl. I mean, it's an amazing series, but it's about this woman who tricks her kid into thinking that she's very ill, so that they can get donations and homes and have kind of a. It's what The Politician is.
Yeah,
based
I was gonna say. Oh, The Politician is based on The Act.
Well. Anybody who knows the story knows that The Politician is completely based on Gypsy Rose Blanchard.
Okay.
Well, Gypsy Rose Blanchard is in prison in my hometown.
Wow.
If that gives you any sort of insight.
What state are you from?
Missouri.
Missouri.
Yep.
Wow, that is small town if you're pronouncing it that way, or does everyone in the state pronounce it that way?
Like many things in Missouri, it really depends on where you land.
Got it.
Because my mom will say Missouri, my dad will say Missouri, my grandma said Missouri, my grandpa said Missouri.
Okay.
I just think Missouri
it's one
sounds...
of those tomato things.
I think so. Same place. It's horrible no matter what.
I give you that idea to rewrite a verse of...
You say Missouri, I say Missouri.
There you go. You just did it.
Definitely.
Perfect for your next cabaret act.
Let's definitely call the whole thing off.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know how much you want to talk about the specifics of the trauma, or like where that wound came from that you mentioned. And I don't want to necessarily like encourage you to talk about, I mean, I think that we can all use our imaginations. Where I went was to the movie Camp, where Robin DeJesus, who we all know is like a multi-Tony nominee, and he was Sunny and In the Heights, but he got his show business debut in the movie Camp, where he played a kid who went to the prom in drag and was beaten violently and didn't find his people until he went to performing arts camp.
Ironically, while they were filming the movie Camp, this is completely off subject, I was hosting a show every Wednesday at Therapy Bar on 52nd Street. And the kids from camp were barely staying alive. And I hosted a talent show every Wednesday that had like a cash prize. And Sasha and Robin and all the kids from camp would come and sing every Wednesday.
Sasha Allen.
Yeah. Would come and sing every week.
After the movie?
During.
Oh, wow. When you say barely staying alive, do
like
you mean
they were
financially?
Yes.
Okay.
They were paid very little for that film, independent film. You know how it is.
Of course.
And
yeah,
so
that was where Anna Kendrick got her start.
All of them. And they were on the struggle bus. So they would come and sing in my bar show every week. It was awesome.
Yeah. Okay. So
I'm telling you, I'm ADD. I'm the worst interview.
This is why I wanted an hour-long podcast. This is also why I don't do, I should say, live radio show, because lots of people listen to it as a podcast, but it's live. but it's also why I don't like doing red carpets. And I mean, they're fun. I shouldn't say I don't like it. I'm not going to turn my nose up at it. I was going to say,
I've seen you on a few red carpets.
Yeah, but I like to go when I'm like, I have one question I'm going to ask everybody, and then I'm going to make a montage. I don't want to, the question will be like, what was your middle school music teacher's name?
Which is awesome. I've seen you ask that at the Tonys before.
Yeah, like to Tonys, I partnered with an organization that wanted to do something where we talked about somebody behind the scenes who got you into the spotlight. And so I like doing red carpets when I can ask one specific question, but my general passion is to get to know somebody for who they really are, and we can plug the project. And of course we want people to go out and buy Marty Thomas, Slow Dancing with a Boy. But mostly I want people to have an opportunity when they're like, I bet we would get along, to get a sense of your personality. And if your personality is ADD, fine. I think that's what sells albums. And when they're like, I know that guy. I may never have met Marty Thomas, but I know that guy. And then they go, I want to support him. He feels like a part of my community. And the best way to do that is when you don't sound like an infomercial.
I agree.
So we'll go in all the different directions. And, we'll sell some albums, but mostly we'll just let people get to know you.
Well,
and they'll get to know me in the process.
I love that.
Good.
You were asking me about... you were saying not to go, that you didn't need to go as specific.
I was giving you permission to talk about it as much as you feel comfortable.
The interesting thing is, it's like, I don't have that trauma story of somebody doing something so horrible to me that's where the miniseries begins. Mm-hmm. It wasn't so deep as to be somebody being violent with me. It was more myself, that I just grew up very religious and very bonded to the idea that you have to sacrifice anything that brings joy and anything that's natural about yourself to make other people around you feel comfortable. And everything is okay as long as nobody knows about it. Right. And that kind of vibe is just so draconian and archaic to me. But in letting that article marinate over the coming months after reading it, every time a song that I was in love with in high school or middle school or college would come on the radio that was sweet, it would bring back memories that were very hurtful, because I started to play back my coming of age years, and I started to realize that I was robbed of those coming of age years. Yeah. That somehow I had convinced myself that I had escaped unscathed. And
because you didn't have a violence story.
Right. And somehow I had gotten out of it and gotten away with the lie. I'd gotten away with it. I just felt like Trump. I got away with it. Jesus. And once I started to realize that I was wounded, but it was hugely my fault. I allowed it. I traded it willingly because of brain. I mean, listen, I have to take some responsibility, because I do feel like I was heavily brainwashed, but I let it happen. And when the light bulb started to come on and I started to see everything, I started to see the wizard behind the curtain and realized that I was tricked and duped into thinking I wasn't enough and I wasn't good enough. I started to realize how many moments I had missed out on, and how these like seemingly innocent coming of age rites of passage that my straight friends got
and took for granted.
And they can look around a room and they can, the hardest thing they have to worry about is who they would have the most fun with at prom or at a school dance or anything. They don't have to work overtime hiding their sexuality. Now, everybody has their something, and everybody has their thing that they're ashamed of, especially teenagers. But just so happens that this article really brought to the surface mine. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah, it's amazing what can be triggering. And when it's something that seems like it's just, happy sort of, people expect, when you watch Law and Order SVU, that would be triggering, but they don't expect that a human interest piece about two high school students going to prom, like, look how sweet they are, that something like that could be triggering. I just need to take a moment and go back and say, like, baby, it wasn't your fault.
No, and I agree. I don't consider it my fault, but I do take the minor responsibility of knowing that I see kids today, bold and proud, and we have to teach people how to treat us. Now, my situation is different than kids that live in New York, as where I grew up, it's a very real possibility that you can get killed for being out and proud. But I still had that option. I still had that possibility. And there's a part of me that will never know what would have happened if I just would have shown up to prom any way I wanted to or been out and proud. Because I chat with people from high school now who have zero issues with my being gay then or ever. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, maybe I just didn't give them enough credit. And maybe if I had taught them how to treat me and been an example, perhaps I could have helped other kids in my high school feel the freedom to come out. Perhaps that could have been the beginning.
Maybe, but also, I mean, look, yes, I'm not going to say but, because I feel like people, just as an aside, the world as a whole overuses the word but, and all it does is negate somebody else's experience when what we really mean is and. Mm-hmm. So, yes, I hear you. And being in this room, in the studio that Romaine Patterson built, Romaine's best friend in high school, he was out and proud. His name was Matthew Shepard, and he was tied to a fence and beaten to death.
Yeah.
And, you know, you could say, and I think Romaine would probably say, although I don't really want to put words into her mouth, that the world has changed for the better as a result of that incident and the publicity that followed. And so, you know, perhaps it was a quote-unquote good thing that he was out and proud. Certainly what happened to him, there's no way to justify that, despite what happened, you know, no matter what happened afterward. But there might have been good things and there might have been bad things that happened. And you're right, you'll never know. But you did survive it, and that is something that's worth celebrating. And I think the idea of reclaiming what was lost to serve the purpose of your survival is so beautiful. And you, through creating this album, Slow Dancing with a Boy, you are reclaiming that. That's my purpose for sure.
I at one point I remember I was at a club, and it was very uncharacteristic for the club to play this ballad. It was late at night, and sometimes I hang out at Industry a lot.
Oh, that's a New York City
staple nightclub. And there are a few DJs there that I love. And one DJ, his go-to when he's like, I want to clear this room, is Redneck Woman by Gretchen Wilson. Yeah. And one night the DJ put on Vanessa Williams' Save the Best for Last. Mm-hmm. And the room, I think unanimously, was like, oh, come on, man. Everybody loves that song. But everybody was at the height of their vibe. And that was definitely a let's get out of here song. Uh-huh. But for me, I instantly started weeping because it brought me back to this summer camp experience after the end of a music camp. And I just so distinctly, I would never have remembered this moment if that song didn't come on after having read that article. And I could feel myself like out of body across a dance floor, watching this boy that I had a crush on, that we were in this choir class together, and seeing all the boys and girls pairing off and dancing together, and planning and scheming, trying to figure out a path to get to him, and trying to watch people and figure out how I could talk to him without anybody else seeing it. And then the party was over and it never happened. And then the end of camp was there. And I remember my parents driving me home from camp and just being devastated that I had let that opportunity pass me by. And, you know, we didn't have internet then. It wasn't like after camp you could just
become
connect.
Facebook friends with someone.
Right, and keep the chat going. It was like, if you didn't live in the same town and you left camp, I'll see you next year or never. Mm-hmm. You know? And it was this just awful, awful feeling of I ruined it. I let my one opportunity pass me by. And I realized, like, to feel like I let my one opportunity pass me by in the 7th grade That's awful.
Do you know that that's like the premise of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend? Did you ever watch that show?
I did watch it.
She tracks him down because she was in love with him in summer camp and lost track of him. And then she sees him on the street in New York City. He happens to mention that he lives in West Covina, California, and she's like, "I'm going to get my chance with my first love."
I didn't do any of that.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, wait, I was going to say, like, do you remember his first and last name?
No.
I want to find him.
I remember exactly what he looks like. And if he was still 12 years old, I could pick him out of a lineup. But let's hope he's not.
And let's not be picking 12-year-olds out of any lineup.
Oh, please. But let's hope he's listening. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, you want to say the name of the camp just in case?
It was at Northwest. It was called Maryville Music Camp. It was at Northwest Missouri State University in Maryville. And it was just, it was awesome. It was as close as I got to theater camp as a kid.
Yeah.
Because from where I'm from, that doesn't happen.
Right. There's no French Woods, which is what camp was based on.
We didn't have that. We had music and choir. We had band and choir camp.
What about now? Do you think that there's something like that out there in Missouri for kids now?
No.
I feel like you should start something.
But that would require moving back to Missouri.
Maybe, but I mean, you do a lot of master classes and stuff with high schools and colleges, and like I feel like you could be like, go back to your hometown and be like, we're gonna put on a play in a weekend.
It's true. And you know, a really close friend of mine, Julie Danielson, runs a company in Kansas City called Music Theater for Young People. And it's a Kansas City youth-based theater group that they do week-long shows every summer, and they do year-round theater. But it's as close as you would get to that, near where I'm from. But that's like a 2.5-hour drive. I am rural.
Rural, like it's spelled with an R-O-O.
Yes.
Oh, Marty.
Like an R-U. It's like a
but
RuPaul
somehow,
term.
like, you found theater. I mean, I assume you're probably tired of talking about the viral moment. Like, you're...
Never.
Okay, you want to tell people?
Yes, I did find theater. It was a complete accident, but I think the crux of my childhood stardom happened on Star Search in '92. I competed against a then unknown Britney Spears.
You didn't just compete against her; you beat her.
I won.
Which people have watched over the last 20 years as Britney has become a household name. You know, like Britney lost on Star Search. Let's watch the clip.
But things went okay for her. She bounced back.
Things went okay for her professionally, but like, I wouldn't trade my life for hers.
I definitely wouldn't trade places. I love her music and I love her career.
I do too. I spent an arm and a leg to have VIP seats at that Vegas residency. I love her music. I expect she's incredibly lonely.
That I don't know. Our parents are still communicate.
How did you end up on Star Search?
I wrote
Were you about
letters.
13?
I was 12.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing The Secret Garden at the time.
Right.
And I wrote, every Saturday they'd have that screen. Anybody who's old enough to remember Star Search remembers that at the end. It's like, would you like to compete on Star Search? Send us a tape. And I would send little cassette tapes that I'd make with my first Casio and write a little handwritten letter in crayon and think,
Dear Ed McMahon.
Basically, it was like a specific letter you had to write, and I would send it in all the time. And I remember one summer, I found community theater and regional theater at Starlight Theater in Kansas City, which is a major regional theater that had a summer program for kids.
But it was 2.5 hours away.
Yes.
So you had to have a supportive family.
My mom could not have been more supportive. And when she started figuring out that I, as a child actor, could make money and that there was a future in theater, I think she was just as excited to get out of small town as I was. Mm-hmm. And when she found opportunities to travel and found that my farmer dad was okay with it as long as there was a future and there was some money coming back, So when professional theater started happening at such a young age, my mom could not have been more supportive, and my sisters, and I was very lucky.
So did your mom move with you to New York to do Secret Garden?
She did.
And did they do auditions in Kansas City? Is that how you found?
No, I was doing regional theater at Starlight, and we were doing, that summer there was a production of Annie. And
it's always Annie.
It's always Annie. And my bestie at the time, her name was Danielle, and she was very well known in the child actor circuit. She played Annie Warbucks in the Annie Warbucks sequel. of Annie.
Annie too?
Yes,
Yeah,
she was Annie in that.
Oh, wow. On Broadway?
It never came to Broadway. It toured and played, I think it played Kennedy Center, I believe. So it never quite came back to Broadway, but she had an agent in New York City that she connected me with. And the agent asked my dad to bring us here for a series of auditions because she was convinced she had a season for me. And, you know, there were a lot of child actor shows that year.
I was here that year. The only time I visited New York before I moved here in 2005 was the summer of 1992. And I saw Crazy for You.
Beautiful.
I saw Guys and Dolls with Nathan Lane and Faith Prince. I saw a show called Conversations with My Father, which starred
I saw that.
Judd Hirsch and a young Jason Biggs. I saw Ruthless, which Brittany was an understudy in.
With Natalie Portman.
Natalie and Brittany were both understudies for Laura Bell Bundy, who is then just Laura Bundy, who I saw in the leading role. She originated that leading role. And I saw The Secret Garden.
You did?
Yep.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
I know. And then I didn't come back to New York until I got recruited for a radio job here at the end of 2004. And then I moved here like the first week of 2005. And look at me now, baby. But yeah, so I was there for your season.
You were there for my debut. But like Les Mis and Will Rogers and Gypsy and Radio City and Ruthless, and there were a lot of shows with child actors. So it was a good season. And my dad took a leap of faith, and we took our first family vacation with my brother and my dad and mom, and we did a little series of auditions, and I booked The Secret Garden, and we moved here 2 weeks later.
Wow, the whole family.
Just my mom and I.
Okay, I was going to say, your farmer dad, what was he going to do?
Yeah, he stayed on the farm and took care of my brother. We were here for about a year. It was one of the greatest years of my life because it was just the world opened up. Just opened up.
I feel like, you know, you said your life as a kid or as a teenager was really different than kids now in New York City. Do you feel like New York gave you the idea that maybe you could be yourself? Did you have any sense of your sexuality at that point? Or your your sexual orientation? I feel like it sucks when we talk about kids and the only language we have to use includes the word sexual.
Right.
Because at that age, it isn't sexual. It's about who you have crushes on and what you sense about yourself that might be different. Or, you know, like I knew that I was obsessed with boys when I was 5 and had my first crushes, but I still wouldn't call it I would not say that there was anything sexual about it. And then at 16, I found out I also like girls. So, you know, I don't know. Anyway, that was my ADD coming in.
Oh, I love that ADD. It definitely didn't feel like a sexual attraction ever. I just had so much experience at that age already of tamping things down because my parents really were trying to protect me. I will say I have very loving parents, as loving as they can possibly be, living in Trenton, Missouri. And mine have been very supportive and very cool. And my mom will be the first to bring her friends to a gay bar or a nightclub to see my shows. And, they have very conflicting beliefs because they are very Republican, but I guess it's different when it's me somehow. But
that's the key, I think, to why the country as a whole, and certainly not all, I shouldn't say as a whole, but the general feelings about gayness have changed so much in the last few years, is that people can be like, oh, I know one of them gays now, like, and it's different when it's somebody you know and love, and maybe for some people that opens up their hearts to what an actual gay person is. Yeah.
Did you ever watch the X-Men series?
The movies?
Yeah.
I saw the first couple.
That first one where there was a politician that was very vocal about mutants. And the mutants all got together and created a serum that turned him into a mutant.
Yeah, I barely remember that, but yeah.
I had such an epiphany watching that movie because when they turned him into a mutant and all of a sudden he changed his story and he was trying to turn back, but all of his constituents turned against him, it was fascinating.
I wish that I mean, I shouldn't say I wish. I don't wish anything bad against anybody, no matter how awful they are. I try to just project love into the world and
Right.
hope that that's an antidote.
Same.
But I think about these Republican politicians who are creating legislation that criminalizes, LGBTQ behaviors or identities, who are closeted, and we only find out when they're like caught in a bathroom stall in an airport.
Comes out every day. I mean, like
feels
3
like
politicians
that's that
yesterday
equivalent.
got pled guilty to campaign finance charges when they've been crying witch hunt
Right.
for months. And it's like, people aren't going to stop lying to hide what they do. But that's what I'm saying. Like, I felt like if I could feel anything I wanted as long as nobody but me knew. And that was the sickness that upset me, that I was living so many years feeling like I could feel any way I want in the privacy of my own home, but no one can ever know. And once I started to realize if no one ever knows, I'll never love anyone, and no one will ever truly love me.
Good thing that hasn't been the case. Everyone I know loves you.
Oh, thank you.
And just to go back to the album for a second, I feel that longing and that history in your mashup cover of Dancing by Myself and On My Own,
Oh, yeah.
which is like the 2 of the ultimate songs of, self-sacrifice in the name of not getting hurt.
Yeah, it's true. And that arrangement is all about that. It was in the first stages of talking about this project. I was talking to my friend Patrick Boyd, who actually, do you know Patrick?
I don't.
He was he played Tulsa in the Bette Midler Gypsy film.
Oh, got it. Okay.
He's Broadway legend and awesome dude. We were talking about
not to know him.
You'd fallen deeply in love with him. He's awesome.
Is he available?
Very gay.
They always are.
So he's your type.
They always are.
He is a wonderful, wonderful man. And we were talking about this article that I had seen. I remember it was I used to do a Friday night show with my friend Marissa Rosen at the Green Room in New World Stages. Mm-hmm. We would just chat and sing songs. And I was talking about the article that I had read and kind of just making light of it and joking about it. And afterwards, Patrick and I sat down and had to talk about it and really had a cry. And I went home and in like 10 minutes wrote that arrangement because it just...
You did that yourself?
Yeah, it just wrote itself.
Well, are you going to be doing concerts for this album?
I have one really big concert on January 5th at the Green Room 42. It is in the Yotel on 42nd. I'd love it if you could come. I had the best idea. We're going to throw a prom.
Shut up!
Yeah.
Oh my God!
But not like an 80s prom. I mean, if that's what you want it to be, that's what it can be.
No, but like...
There's no theme.
Prom for everyone. Where
Prom
have I
for
heard
everyone.
that? It's like, this is parallel to the story of Barry Glickman in The Prom.
Very,
which
very
closed
similar.
Recently.
One of the producers came to a concert I did last year where I was talking about this project. And he was very moved by the concept because this project started before prom was even a thing. I mean, maybe it had been written, but before I knew any of the concept of prom, it is very similar. But I just decided that this concert needed to have an element of... The album for me is a healing process, and it was intended to take these songs back. Each song on the album has like a very specific memory of middle school, high school, college, where I felt less than, and I felt a longing that I couldn't quite reach, and very much attached to the song. And each song has a very specific school dance that it's attached to. So I wanted to, if I was going to have a party, have the opportunity to have that moment, that prom that I wanted as a high schooler. I feel like...
Do you have somebody to bring?
I do.
You do?
I do.
Oh my gosh. Guess what? You guys are going to be both prom kings.
I think we are.
I'm going to stuff the ballot box. But you know what? I don't think I'll need to. I think everyone at that party knows who the prom kings are going to be.
I think they might give it to me. But I hired a party band and a DJ and a prom photographer, and we're building the cheesiest prom backdrop ever for the prom photo that you botched. Where I remember in high school, the prom photographer, he was so nice and he did every school dance, and he would come by and he would move you and he would put your hand on her arm, or he would like bend your knee awkwardly or have her sit on a column or something.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Or like, the super, super tall girl would have to stand in front of the really short guy, and he'd like be peeking around because she'd gone through puberty and he hadn't, like, oh my gosh, I'm definitely going to be there.
I'm so looking forward to it. It's just definitely my sort of second chance.
Do you know what
prom.
you're going to wear?
Oh, are you kidding? Yes. Just like high school. I had that planned out months before.
You are, in fact, a stylist.
I am.
And not just, I don't know what I'm going to say. Not just, I mean, you're a professional stylist in addition to, you do so many things. You have like a thriving hair business. You're like a pageant, you coached a Miss America pageant winner. And like you if you weren't a performer, you'd still be a Broadway star because you've got these other, they're not even side businesses. They're part of your identity.
They're very much full-time businesses. I think when I went to hair school several years ago, I was stepping away from performing for a minute because I think I was having a bit of a crisis about what this album is based on. And I think I was having a bit of a crisis that a lot of my career as a performer and a lot of my possibilities as a performer were built on getting me out of my hometown and knowing that I needed to get somewhere where I could become who I am today. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
And I think I was having a crisis that I was being defined by work. And I was working on a show for many years that I got let go of right before it went to Broadway. And it put me in such a depression that I couldn't get out of bed for like 2 weeks. And knowing that that was something that could shut me down, and I see myself as a very powerful, confident person, but knowing that a job and people hearing that I had been let go of this show before I went to Broadway was so devastating to me, I really realized I needed to get a grasp on what's real, because that's not real. It's not real.
I hear you. And what's real to each of us? Like, I will never tell anyone who's depressed that they need to snap out of it because what they're depressed about is not, because depression is not circumstantial.
It's not.
Circumstance can trigger it, and maybe you can attack sort of or work on, strengthen your ability to be resilient and not get thrown into that depression. Okay.
And that's what this album is.
But if you beat yourself up for being depressed, it'll only make you more depressed.
I completely agree. And I certainly don't feel like beating myself up. I feel more like just owning that something, a third party was taking me to a place of lack of control. And I realized I needed to take that power back, because the reason I was letting that loss of that job affect me so horribly was, what will people think? And who am I if I'm not a Broadway star? Who am I if I'm not, and chorus boy, whatever. Who am I if I'm not on Broadway? And this project and stepping away from theater and trying something new, which was going to beauty school, helped me realize I'm so much more than that, because I can be happy and do so many things.
Any number of things.
I don't have to be a working chorus boy.
You don't have to be
happy.
what you were defined as when you were 10 years old as an actor. And
that.
Like, oof.
And coming back to New York and, working on Wicked, it's such a big thing. I think I just defined myself the way that other people were defining me, and I am so much more interesting than that. So going to beauty school really took me out of my comfort zone and took me out of my bullshit and gave me something else to really focus on and thrive doing. Got this awesome job working for Lion King on Broadway, and I got to work on In the Hair Room at The King and I on Broadway, and Aladdin, and got to design a couple of off-Broadway musicals.
Oh my gosh, The Marvelous Wonderettes.
Oh, I love that show.
I know.
I loved that show. And I got to do Clockwork Orange at New World Stages, the English import.
Yeah. Oh, listen, I love that show. The guy who played the lead I've become friends with. The lead producers are like my best friends in the world.
They're wonderful.
Yeah, so you did an excellent job. And
thank you.
And how nice to be able to spend all that time with all of those very, very, very cute boys.
I know. I would get a call from production that they'd be like, hey, the boys need a shape up. Can you? And I'm like, send them over.
Does anybody need their chest shaved?
Line them up. And my favorite is actors like males love taking their shirts off to get a haircut.
Oh,
Guys
because
do.
of course you
Because
get...
it gets little hairs in your shirt.
I mean, yeah.
And when they're in a private salon and they're
Find
not
that
like
option.
going to the supercuts,
Uh-huh.
they'll just whip their shirts off. And in that case, it was just red letter day.
I bet. And I bet for them too. Actually, you and I talked for a while, like a long time. We've been like, someday you're going to dye my hair pink. Someday you're going to dye my hair pink. And I ultimately did dye my hair pink. I was waiting for you to do it, but then I had the opportunity. I went out for a few weeks on tour with Todrick Hall, and he has this incredible hair and makeup woman named Valerie, and we shared a tour bus. Not the two of us. There were 15 of us sharing that bus.
That's very Todrick. I love that.
But there was one night that everybody went out, and I was like, I can't do it. I just want to stay on the bus. I'm going to go to bed early. And Val was like, I'm not going out either. Like, I'm going to stay on the bus. I thought I was going to bed. She was like, I'm thinking maybe of putting you in drag. So she put me in full drag. We created a whole drag character for me.
What's your name?
Lauren Somnia Merch.
Oh, yeah.
I suggested Lauren Somnia because a lot of people call me Lore, and then Insomnia because it was the middle of the night. But because I was there as Todrick's merchandise lead, Val insisted that Merch be part of my name, so we decided Somnia Merch was a hyphenated last name. Lauren Somnia Merch.
From a previous marriage.
Exactly. So she and I totally bonded over that experience. And then
I follow her. She's amazing.
She's incredible. Valerie Love, Valaree Love. And then just because we got along so well, another night she was like, we're doing it. She had some extra hot pink hair dye, and I'd been talking about it. And here's the deal. I've identified as a blonde my whole life, and only just now found out I'm not actually blonde. The last time I got my what I thought were highlights, but it turns out was actually just full on bleaching my hair. Last time I had that done was right before Christmas of last year, so it's been about a year. And then, let's be frank, money is tight.
I get it.
Which might be a good time to plug the fact that for only $6.95 a month, you can get every episode of Laura Heywood Interviews a week early and help me actually cover the costs of making this show. So if you'd like to help, dnrstudios.com/Laura. Anyway, I was like, I can't afford, even though the person who's done my hair forever is wonderful and gives me a really good deal because she's been doing it for more than 10 years. She basically hasn't raised the costs in the entire time that we've known each other. I can't afford to have my roots done.
Blonde is expensive.
Yeah. And even though I do have I was born a blonde, it's not like turning, somebody who has a dark complexion into a blonde. Still, it's an expensive, habit. Anyway, I also was like, I don't even know what I really look like anymore. So I decided to just grow it out. And I thought I'll just have my natural hair color. And then if I want to go blonde again, I will. But I'm just going to grow it out, save some money, and see what I look like without the blonde. And so I've been doing that, and I ended up basically with brown hair with a few inches of blonde, like bleached out blonde, at like the bottom half of my hair. And I've always wanted to dye my hair. Like when I was going through I was going to say my rebellious phase, but I've never grown out of it. In high school, I really wanted to dye my hair. I was a commercial model. I did a lot of commercial print for things like Nintendo and, like GTE MobileNet.
That's
things
awesome.
Like that. So, dyeing my hair wasn't really an option because I was going out on auditions and stuff. But, I also, I identify as queer, and I'm this big time, political activist, but people look at me and very often think that I'm conservative or passive or, that or I'm a soccer mom, and look, I'd love to be a soccer mom someday, but I also want people to look at me and be like, oh yeah, she's a weirdo just like us.
She's a rocker too.
Without me having to yell like, I'm a weirdo too. Stop looping, like lumping me in with the jocks and the cheerleaders. That's not, I'm a theater kid.
And Valerie, like a wonderful superhuman that she is, happened to have some extra hot pink hair.
That's
dye.
right.
Just extra.
Well,
laying around. I love that.
Well, that's because of what Todrick's wigs have on them, which is hot pink. At least one of them. He was changing it out all the time, and he decided he wanted this incredible pink, like ombre, which involved getting several different shades of pink, and so there was extra, and that's what we did. So I thought the best way to get a vibrant hot pink, which is to bleach the hair first.
Sure.
And why not, if I'm growing out my natural color anyway, just dye the part that's already bleached out, see what it feels like, and then if I don't like the pink, I can just cut that part off and just have a short brown haircut.
Sure.
So that's why it's just like the bottom half is pink right now. The last thing I want to do is add more expense when the whole point was to not spend money on my hair anymore.
I hear what you mean, but I'll hook it up for you.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, be happy to.
Okay. Well, Valerie is actually coming into town to do my hair and makeup for the Tonys this year. We haven't figured out any of the details, but I was like, that's the goal, is to get her here to be my stylist for the Tonys. I was like, Laura Insomnia merch is not going to the Tonys, but Laura Heywood is. And
I mean, you guys bonded.
We did.
I feel like that's important.
We did, yeah.
A hairdresser bond is important.
Yeah, agreed. But if for some reason she can't come to town, or, she's not local, so I don't know. I don't mean to say like you're my backup.
I'll be your understudy, Valerie.
But I feel like I want to go where my hair is the defining statement. I want like a simple black dress and maybe some like jewelry, but I want the pink to pop, and maybe that's at the time at which we
go all over.
Okay, so let's talk about it. Is this okay? I feel like I've just taken over. I've taken over your
all about
album
it.
promotion. Go buy Marty Thomas Slow Dancing with a Boy, and then your next album will be Marty Thomas dyeing Laura's hair pink. Okay, so if I wanted like really, really super hot pink hair, we'd have to bleach it, right? Like
we would have to bleach it, but you don't have to strip it.
You don't?
Because the thing is, like, when you're going a cool color, like blue or purple, you have to get every bit of warmth out of the hair. And hair that sits in the brown family has an undertone of red to it.
Okay.
So you have to get past every bit of that red for it to be able to take a true blue or a true purple. But a warm color like red and pink, you really just have to bleach it down to a yellow. Like you don't
sort
have
of like what my hair already was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't even have to go that far.
Okay.
Nowhere near that far.
I really want to avoid roots. Like, I don't want the upkeep. And what I love about the two-tone that I have going right now is that it doesn't look like roots. It looks more like sort of an ombre.
Well, this is more of a balayage.
Oh, what does that word mean?
Balayage is just Italian for to paint. So balayage is kind of the trendy version of highlighting now. Instead of just the ombre, where it's a hard line all around the hair that just kind of keeps growing out as a hard line all around the hair that's kind of 90s.
I thought ombre was a fade.
It is a fade, but it's with hair, if you're calling it an ombre, it's kind of a line around the hair, even if it kind of fades down.
Like Heather Locklear on Melrose Place.
Yes, kind of.
Like a long, long root.
Like a long root. With balayage, it can go really close to the root, or it can go what your hair is doing now. I love doing balayage because the grow out is amazing. As it grows out, you just can keep toning it. It doesn't get that hard, I need to get my hair done because I look poor. My friend Tracy McDowell, do you know Tracy? Another Broadway girl. She was in Motown. Rent. She once I was with her and somebody said, "Oh my God, I love your balayage," and I love your ombre. She said, "It's not ombre. It's just poor." It was just highlights growing
I mean,
out.
yeah, I love the fact that that's a style that exists now.
Yeah.
I've been using this like color depositing conditioner on my hair.
Overtones?
It actually isn't Overtone. Overtone's the one that always shows up in my Instagram
Sure.
feed. But I went into a beauty shop when I was in California visiting my family for the holidays, and I asked. They had never heard of Overtone, but they knew they had something else that's similar.
There are several that are really good for your hair. They're
And so,
conditioning.
so I just put it in my hair dry when I'm going to be at home for a while, just in the bottom half, and then like pin it back and let it soak in. And then I rinse it out and shampoo my hair normally. And I feel like it's starting to creep into the brown part because I'm not professionally painting in.
I love it. But don't shampoo your hair after you put the pink in. Only condition.
Okay.
Because shampoo blasts open the cuticle and will let the pink pour out. Conditioner just, it's like a paint, a shellac. It's
So
just like,
so I should wash my hair first.
No.
I still have to wash my hair though. Like when am I going to
Well,
wash my hair? Otherwise my roots get oily.
How often do you wash your hair?
Like every 2 or 3 days.
Well, that's not so bad. So like the day after you wash your hair, dye your hair.
Okay.
And then as you rinse it out with cool water, not warm water.
I know.
Condition it, and that will lock the color in much longer.
Okay.
If you shampoo after you put in color, it's not going to last as long.
Okay. Thanks for the tips.
You're welcome.
Okay, what else should we talk about? I know. We've got 7 minutes left. I want to talk about one of the first times that you were on my radar beyond the Secret Garden,
Okay.
which was when you won the Mr. Broadway competition.
Oh, Mr. Broadway for the Ali Fournet Center.
That's right. And we always end the show here at Laura Heywood Interviews by talking about a good cause. I
Yeah.
call it Just Cause because, like, why wouldn't you use your platform to make the world a better place? And also, it's a just cause. And
Really,
we at
truly.
DNR Studios, we love the Ali Fournet Center. We get all our interns through them.
Really?
Yeah.
That's magical. Do you know how it got started? How the Ali Fournet got started?
Well, I know that Ali Fournet was a queer youth who was homeless, and basically, in addition to just figuring out how to survive, he figured out a way to help other young queer people who are living on the streets
It's
thrive.
true. Truly part of like the house system that Pose, the TV show, is based on.
Oh,
but,
I did not know that.
I mean, it's truly part of that system. Like it's built on building families where families are deficient.
Yeah.
Of like kids come to New York and they will find a family. Life goes on. Like somehow life finds a way, like Jurassic Park. But he was an activist. Ali Fournet was an activist, and he was murdered really tragically. And in his name, this organization was started in 2002. And it's one of the largest LGBTQA, anybody who needs help organizations in the country. They have a 24-hour stop-in clinic with medical and mental health assistance. Just about anything that a kid could use help with and need help with. And there are a shocking number of homeless LGBTQ teens, even in a place like New York. It's
Well, a lot of
shocking.
them come to New York, I think, after being, maybe they're the version of you from your youth who decided to try to see what would happen, to be out and proud. And they ended up out, but also out of their homes,
Yeah.
disowned by their families. And where do you go? You
Right.
find you scrape together enough money to get on a bus and you go to New York because there might be a family waiting there for you in
or
a big
something
city.
waiting for you, an
Yeah.
opportunity of some kind where you can be accepted.
So the mission statement of Ali Fournet Center, which you can find at www.alifournetcenter.org, ALIFORNEY center.org, is our mission is to protect LGBTQ youths from the harms of homelessness and empower them with the tools needed to live independently. And I first found out about the Ali Fournet Center because of a big fundraising pageant called Mr. Broadway, where every show on Broadway was invited to send a chorus boy to compete in a sort of tongue-in-cheek Miss America-style pageant. And you were there representing Xanadu or Wicked?
I was Xanadu. I was
Xanadu.
Mr. Xanadu.
Which, by the way, your roller skating, it has to be on your special skills.
It totally is. I'm so happy to hear that.
Well, yeah, I'll never forget like the show ends with you doing this spectacular glittery roller skating.
I was so close to bringing my dog Sassy today in his Xanadu t-shirt that you gave us at the flea market.
Oh my gosh, you still have it?
Oh my gosh, yes. It was just so cold and my dog is so little.
Oh yeah. Well, okay, so the Xanadu dog shirt is such a funny story because at the Broadway Cares Flea Market, which is a huge fundraiser for another incredible organization, Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS.
Love them.
All these crazy things end up there. It happens every September. And in addition to props and costumes and autographed items and the opportunity to take photos with your favorite stars, there are also all of these like merch one-off prototypes.
Yeah.
And there will be bins and bins of things that are like $5 or $1 and sometimes really incredible stuff ends up in these bins. And in the midst of a bunch of T-shirts from shows that had closed or never made it to Broadway was this one dog. Do you call it a shirt? It's like
a
it
little
like
dog
buttons
shirt.
around. That's made for a dog that's probably 10 pounds or less. And it was with Xanadu, and I was with somebody at the time who had a little dog, so we got it. But then we ran into you. We had you sign the dog. Do you remember that?
I do.
We held him up. You autographed him.
There's a picture.
Yeah, that's right. We got to find that. And then I don't know whether it was before or after I dumped that dude, but I was like, this dog shirt has to belong to Marty.
After.
Yeah, it was
That's
after
how
I
got
dumped
it.
him.
And I had to take it in to fit Sassy
You
because
did.
he's a bit of a runway model.
You hemmed it.
Yeah.
You altered it.
But I couldn't
perfect
believe
fit.
it. I looked and looked and looked for that T-shirt, and they didn't exist.
No, they never existed. I don't know why somebody would even order a prototype for that.
And not print a million of them.
But like, was there a dog theme in Xanadu?
There's always a dog theme.
I don't know. I feel like it makes sense for a show where...
Like Legally Blonde, if there was a dog
exactly.
shirt.
That would make sense.
Yeah, no, there was
For
never a
Xanadu.
dog idea. But I'm super happy to have the only existing Xanadu dog T-shirt.
One of my favorite things, the reason that I'm not considered a hoarder is that the only thing I love more than collecting stuff is finding that stuff its forever home.
Yeah.
Sort of like somebody who fosters kittens or something. and a lot of the merchandise and a lot of the collectibles I have stay with me until it becomes clear that this existed on Earth only because it was supposed to someday end up with Marty Thomas.
I love that you foster Broadway merch.
I do. So if you have any Broadway merch that you feel you're ready to let find its forever home,
Bring it to the Broadway's Miss Hannigan of merchandise.
Give it to me. I'm like an orphanage for Broadway merchandise.
Little dog clothes, little dog clothes.
I am going to have a booth at BroadwayCon this year.
Really?
That's an exclusive on my own show. I haven't talked about yet, but yeah. So I do a lot of thrifting.
Yeah.
And I find Broadway merchandise, but mostly T-shirts. Almost every time I go to like the Salvation Army or whatever. I even just found I found a button at a flea market in California from a show that ran on Broadway for one night called Frankenstein Live at the Palace. I was in some random town in Oregon and found like a Cats keychain from the original production. I find stuff everywhere. And so I decided to just have a rummage sale at BroadwayCon.
I have some things I should probably donate to you.
I'd love that. I would love that. And I always give a portion to charity. But also Mama's got to eat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do know.
So I have over 500 Broadway show shirts that I found over the course of just the past year.
And where do you keep them?
I keep them in my 500 square foot apartment.
Hoarder.
Oh, no. They're good.
Oh, no.
I'm just storing them until my sale.
That's what they all say.
No, but I'm actually... I paid $400 for a portion of a booth at BroadwayCon to get rid of all the stuff so I can start collecting more stuff.
This sounds like an episode of Hoarders.
Shut up. No.
Yeah.
I just realized we've been off the air for 45 seconds. Luckily, I have a backup recording that's captured all of this, and I'm going to use that for when we put this out as a podcast. So podcasters will have heard it, but live people got cut off 45 seconds.
Talking about hoarding.
Oh, Marty Thomas, I love you so much. Slow Dancing with a Boy is available December 6th, or for those of you who are hearing this, it's already available now. So go find it, martythomas.com.
I also, on December 14th, I'm doing Subculture with Jason Robert Brown.
You are?
I can't believe
Gosh, I'm coming to that too, December
it. It happened
14th.
because of this album. Broadway World debuted a track of Jason Robert Brown's song that I sang on the album, Someone to Fall Back On. And he heard it online and reached out to me. And I was on a cross-country road trip. I drove 4,000 miles from San Fran to New York. And I was in the Grand Canyon just luxuriating, and I got a Facebook message with all capital letters from Jason Robert Brown, who's like, I know him, but I don't know him.
Yeah.
And it said, I have sent you an email in all caps. I made my friends drive out of the park so
you
I could
get
check my email
service.
because I was like, please don't be a cease and desist.
Oh my God.
And it was, hey, I've wanted to do a concert with you for a while. Want to be my guest? And I happen to know that this past weekend his guest was just Betty Buckley
Oh my gosh.
and BD.
You know, his guest a few weeks ago was Stephen Sondheim.
It's kind of a big deal. He's very picky, and to be in that elite list, I'm honored. So December 14th, I get my one night with Jason Robert freaking Brown.
And then January 5th, the prom,
It's my prom.
which I'm coming to, and I might have somebody to bring.
What are you going to wear?
I still fit, or I now again fit into my prom dress from 1995.
Oh, my
So-
God. What does that dress look like?
Oh, you'll see on January 5th.
I
Yeah.
can't wait.
Okay. Marty Thomas, thank you for being on Laura Heywood Interviews for this now special extended version. I love you.
I love you, too.